You may or may not know this, but there are quite a few references to the puppet in Security Breach. From the staff bots' facial patterns to the Nightmarionne references on the alpha bots, to toys of both hiding across the Pizzaplex, there's plenty of little nods. This led to a popular theory a while back that the puppet was in the Pizzaplex during Security Breach, that it was a would-be mastermind, either working with Vanny or pulling the strings behind the curtain, if I recall right. All of my information is coming secondhand from my own comment section. I don't subscribe to this theory. By now you know my thoughts on theorizing and speculation. I like to be able to see something before I start saying it's there. There are plenty of nods to the puppet, yes, but it is physically not there. Nobody in the story mentions it. Vanny's not even directly stated to be working for Burntrap in the game, let alone some puppet figure. This is an interesting theory, but by all accounts, it's not accurate. The puppet is not in Security Breach, nor is Lefty. But it should have been. What am I proposing? Well, I am proposing that shouldn't have been a Funtime Freddy head topping the Blob's body, but Lefty's own. And not only am I going to explain why, but I am going to show you how, somehow, Security Breach had the proper setup for this twist until everything fell to pieces in the last second. How FNAF was 2 seconds away from creating a monster that had been years in the making, and just missed it. Let's start with the most basic point to get it out of the way, the many references to the puppet across the Pizzaplex. That way I don't have to come back later and then point them all out. There are a surprising amount of references to the puppet in Security Breach, even though there isn't actually a puppet, and weirdly enough, none of them are in the prize counter. The puppet plush can be found in a couple of locations. The most notable one being in the bathroom closet in the West Arcade where you hit the second breaker. The puppet plush sits on the floor alongside a lost shoe, one that looks like a girl's. This is a shoe used in a few places around, but it is a possible nod to Charlie, the former puppet. There is another puppet plush somewhere in the Pizzaplex, but I don't remember where, though I do recall that it isn't anywhere too telling. There are a couple of Nightmarionne plushies across the Pizzaplex, one that you can even collect in the Endoskeleton Maze area that is mistakenly labeled as a Nightmare plushie, and one that you can find hidden in the Monty Golf Golf Ball teacup ride. The puppet, Security Puppet, and Nightmarionne appear on a basketball arcade game in some of the arcades, as do many of the animatronics across the series, so that's not exclusive to them. Now, the most important references to the puppet in the Nightmarionne are in the staff bots and alpha staff bots. While the alpha staff bots markings are more noticeable, both sets of bots are based somewhat off of the puppet. Most staff bot models tend to have round cheeks with little triangles under their eyes, resembling the puppet's cheeks and tear marks. The alpha staff bots have crude faces drawn on them resembling Nightmarionne's, with the words, "In your dreams," written across their chest, which is a reference to the fact that Nightmarionne is a nightmare, as you could have probably picked up from their plush. In the East Arcade where you cross to get to the prize counter, there's lights that are black and white striped. These are likely just aesthetic lights, and they're pretty neat design. But they are not the only black and white striped thing in the Pizzaplex. No, there is something else. Something kind of strange. In the Vanny ending Disassembled or Saved, you are chased through the underside of Fazbear and through a server room. From the amount of servers, I would guess that this likely controls more than just Fazbear. And due to the location directly under the stairs to Vanny's room, and right within her reach, I would take a guess that Vanny has been tampering around in here. There are black and white striped wires all throughout the ceiling of the room, in and out of control panels and into some of the servers. They likely mean nothing, but the deliberate nature of making these wires black and white striped could have meant something big. For now, it's just an odd choice that they're not just wires like they are pretty much everywhere else. It should also be of note that this server room could very well be what's controlling the staff bots. Sure, we see Vanny using a simple remote to control all of the staff bots, but obviously that is just a controller. There's a bigger system behind these automated machines, ones that are unlike the mascot animatronics with their personalities and some amount of sentience, instead following preset pathing and direct commands. The better employee, one who can do whatever you want with just the click of a button. A server room of striped wires and staff bots with rounded blushes and tear marks. So now that we established that, let's put the puppet stuff aside, we'll get back to it later, but let's take a quick look at the Blob. The Blob, real name unknown, though its lone wires are known as Tangles in the files, is an amalgamous, amorphous, animatronic-esque creature living in the depths of the Pizzaplex. It is comprised of numerous animatronic parts, with its head being of Funtime Freddy and even having a baby, Chica, Bonnie, and a puppet mask attached to it. Weirdly enough, the puppet mask is without its tear marks, which may have been an error. It should be noted that regardless of the similarities to Molten Freddy, this is not Molten Freddy. Molten Freddy's mask is different, his wires are Afton-grade endos while these are some sort of industrial-grade ones. Molten Freddy, an amalgam of 3, can still talk, while the Blob is a mute screeching beast. Most importantly, Molten Freddy was shown burning in the fire. The Blob is to Molten Freddy as DJ Music Man is to Music Man. They look similar, but they are not the same. One is bigger, has different mechanics, and is mute. That's a weird amount of similarities now that I think about it. Okay, but that aside, the Blob. I like the Blob well enough, but let me be blunt. It is a useless character. Think about it. The Blob appears at the end of the game, where you can sort of see it for a second or two, during which it does nothing, receives no explanation, and will set you back to a distant save if you approach it without Freddy. Which you may do, as it is never told that you absolutely must go down the hatch in Freddy. It reaches into the office at the end of the Burn Trap boss fight to no effect, and then it grabs Burn Trap in the ending to no effect. We don't even know what this is. Why would we care if it got a hold of Afton? It doesn't speak, it doesn't emote, it simply exists. One common theory is that the Blob is an amalgam of the animatronics from FNAF AR, or, in universe, the Fazbear Funtime service, where Fazbear Entertainment sent animatronics to people's houses for no discernible reason. This would make sense as Chica, Bonnie, Baby, and even Funtime Freddy were all animatronics in the Funtime program. Except not the puppet. Except, why was the puppet not in FNAF AR? All of the other toys were in it, so why not them? Well, I think it's because of Lefty, because Lefty was going to be in FNAF AR. In case you didn't know, Lefty was teased from the very beginning, his appearance hidden in the static of the screen in the earliest teasers. And yet somehow, even though this character was finished, Lefty didn't make it into the game before the game decided to go on to an extended hiatus. So, Lefty never made it into the Funtime service. Lefty never made it into the Blob. But it should've. But before I explain why, let me explain how. Let's start at the beginning. Well, further back. I'm sure you know this, but Lefty was a bear trap designed to seal the puppet inside of it. In Pizzeria Simulator, the puppet was trapped within it, and at the end of the game they burned in a fire, except no they didn't. At least, not to our knowledge. We see Burn Trap, Baby, and Molten Freddy burn, but for some reason we do not see Lefty. Lefty's next big reveal is being teased in FNAF AR. Early too, for some reason, as though Lefty is such a big and fan-favorite character. How very interesting. It must have been important to have it all finished with teasers and stuff ready for release. But then it just didn't happen. There were some, issues that cropped up that we see frequently in the mobile gaming spectrum, and the game stopped updating with its latest revealed character being Funtime Freddy, who went on to top the Blob. Lefty was ready to go out the door. Voice acting, animations, modeling, it was all done. It just didn't make it. Take this one with a grain of salt, but apparently there was also something known and teased as the C virus in an early FNAF AR trailer. While this might have been the whole glitch trap virus Ness was unleashing in the cut emails, the codename C virus is oddly specific, especially since there was a C virus going around, making it a relatively hot button name to subscribe to. Must mean something, right? This has led people to thinking that this is either connected to Cassidy or Charlie. Cassidy would be the assumed choice, but the teasers of Lefty, the attention on Lefty, it could raise a brow in the direction of Charlie. This virus, along with most of the plot of FNAF AR, and almost everything about Ness, her hair color, her personality, the way she's being haunted and threatened by Glitch Trap, none of it made it into Security Breach. It was all scrapped. But I digress. Except no, I don't, because it's time I'm completely honest with you about what I've been building up to. All of this focus on Lefty, these weird coincidences, even all of the possible hints of the puppet in Security Breach. I don't think they mean anything. In fact, I think most of this wasn't even on purpose. Lefty not being shown burning in Pizzeria Simulator, likely an oversight. Not appearing in FNAF AR, even though being finished and hinted so hard, probably one of those mobile game things. It was more important to get all the skins out so Funko could get the merch machine going. The C-Virus, like I said, it didn't make it into Security Breach, and the Blob is Funtime Freddy. It doesn't really matter, and neither does the Blob. It's all just a bunch of little things that look like they could mean something, but don't. So, how funny is it that all you had to do was give the Blob Lefty's face, and suddenly all those little tiny things that likely meant nothing at all would have suddenly had retroactive importance? It would have looked like you had been building up for this for years, when it was really just a bunch of happy coincidences. Think about it. Lefty doesn't burn in the fire. In a perfect world, it releases as the last animatronic before Security Breach's release, along with the emails about the C-Virus, establishing it as a proper concept. Then Security Breach releases, and we've got the Blob, and we realize what happened to the Funtime service. Releasing Lefty was a bad call. It consumed the others, and it now is the only one left, sunken under the Pizzaplex, composed perhaps of those striped server wires. But it cannot control the staff bots, no. It only controls what gets infected, the things that fall into the basement and fester like it does in the oily sludge. The alpha staff bots, the early models, the ones that weren't protected against the virus. Not to mention the fact of what the Blob being Lefty does to the Blob. Because, in a cruel and sick sort of way, Lefty's main directive has a fault that shows exactly how something as grotesque as the Blob could have been created. The main problem with Lefty's directive, and the red flag that it would be an issue if Lefty continued existing past the fire, hides in its name. Lure. Lure in the targeted animatronics. Encapsulate. Grab it inside. Fuse. Become one with it. Transport. Take it somewhere. And extract. When Lefty was created, that extract was not performed by Lefty itself, but by Henry. The extract, I believe, was the process of the fire releasing the soul from the puppet. It required that human last step. So if Henry is not there to do it, there isn't an extraction. Lefty, either still possessed by the puppet, or perhaps just influenced by a virus, which is the remains of the puppet's pain and remorse before and during its burning, becomes swayed to not just collect one animatronic, but more. Marred with the puppet's desire to protect the others, as stated in its voice lines, it sees itself as a protector, and Lefty's need to capture. As Lefty says in Ultimate Custom Night, there's room for one more. But looking at Lefty's programming, there is no method of releasing those who are trapped. So Lefty is set up in a way where it would consume animatronics, fuse with them, take them to the pizzeria, which is now in the basement where it lurks, and wait to be burned. But the burning never comes because Henry is gone. The extraction is incomplete. Wires spill through Lefty's casing until he is merely a head, perhaps absorbing some of those black and white wires throughout the Pizzaplex. If it had, those tentacles sneaking into the office during the last boss would have looked very similar to the Nightmarionne's fingers wiggling into the bedroom in Help Wanted. Lefty has fused with those wires and those animatronics, and is now just this mass of tangles, stuck in a perpetual cycle of consuming and absorbing. I mentioned once that the Blob is like if someone wanted to do an homage to No-Face from Spirited Away, but didn't really know much about what exactly was going on with him, had just saw a clip of him without full context. The Blob is Lefty in an almost completely perfect homage to No-Face, a masked spirit who consumes too much of the greed and decadence around him until he becomes an enormous mound that can do nothing but blindly gorge. Once docile towards children, it is now dangerous because it cannot resist itself or its own impulses. That is what the Blob should be, and that is what happens when you create something for a purpose that could become assuaged by the throes of agony. We don't even know if this is Charlie, or just what remains of her memories and the combined memories of everything it has swallowed up inside. But that is not all if we're going to be looking at the Tales of the Pizzaplex books, because they have some of the framework for the Blob Lefty story as well. Though they wasted on some OC that sticks out like a sore thumb. So there is a mechanical tree in the Pizzaplex that spreads its wires around and controls the other animatronics, and assumedly the staff bots. That's it. If it's controlling staff bots, if it's using the wires, if it's not necessarily a tree but a hive mind, then there's the final connection we could use with the blob being Lefty. Lefty, the coffin that the puppet died in, using its own limbs to control dozens of puppet-like clones who are not aware and cannot think for themselves, and instead require a higher power to do so. Suddenly the blob itself makes more sense. The puppet claimed to be the aware one, that the others were like animals, and now the blob is wrangling them in and trapping them into a living enclosure. And the best part about all of this is that you don't need notes or cutscenes. I mean, you should have at least some of those, but the second we would have dropped down into that hole and saw Lefty's head on those wires, we might have not known exactly what happened, but that sinking feeling would have kicked in. Something went wrong along the way. That's not normal. The ultimate failure of Pizzeria Simulator not being that Afton would inevitably return and that those who opposed him were all killed, but that something just as awful slinked right under the radar. What we thought was the end was actually the beginning of something new and much worse. Here stands the new face of Freddy Fazbear's, built by the original creator himself. And that's why the blob should have been Lefty. Thank you for watching.